So, very good morning, everyone. We are about to start our fourth UCAB fireside chat. This is the fourth in our short, let's say, history of speaking to the world, to Europe on behalf of the Ukrainian agriculture sector. I believe in Ukraine now it's very healthy. It will be another very healthy, warm day with 30 degrees Celsius, while in Brussels here there is usual rain with 15 degrees and gloom in the streets, the typical European atmosphere. Perhaps it's not a particularly good morning in Ukraine as we are at the 848th day of war, of full-scale aggression of Russia against Ukraine. But we have to go on. Ukraine, its economy, its people, and the agriculture sector have to continue. And today we will talk about a major event that took place a couple of weeks ago in Berlin on the 11th and the 12th of June, the third Ukraine Recovery Conference that was organized by German government as the leader of G7, as the chairman country in the G7 group, and with the full participation of almost 3,000 participants, representing approximately more than 500 companies, NGOs, think tanks, and mass media, representatives of Ukrainian enterprises. Ukrainian government was in full force, and where they discussed again the perennial topic: how Ukraine should come back from the ashes of war, to recover, to rebuild, and to be back in open to business, to their partners across the world and in Europe. My name is Nazar Pobitsky. I am the head of the Brussels office of the Ukrainian Agribusiness Club, UCAB, and today we have an excellent range of panelists, leaders of UCAB, who personally have been in Berlin and took a very active part in the debate about how to support Ukraine financially in its fight against the aggressor and in the aftermath in rebuilding their economy. Let me introduce our distinguished speakers. Today we have with us Alex Lisica, founder and president of UCAB and CEO of Industrial Milk Company, one of the leading agricultural companies of Ukraine. We have with us Katerina Rybachenko, shareholder and member of the board of the Agroregion agricultural company, and Georg von Nolten, member of the board of UCAB and CEO of Continental Farmers Group company in Ukraine. So before we will start by looking, by judging an overall how the conference went, considering that this is the third event in a row, whether the glass has been half full, half empty, and to which end we are looking in terms of international community moving in the right direction to support Ukraine financially. I invite Alex Lisica to set the stage by sharing with us his overall impression, general impression of the event. Alex, please.
Thank you, Nazar. Thank you for the nice introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, good morning. You know, if you just take a look on the picture of Nazar, you see that definitely is a rain in Brussels because you are all in a fog, you know, like it's not
literally the weather
yeah,
here.
Exactly. So anyway, I will not spend a long, I will not do a long speech about last week. I will just mention a few things which were very important for the whole Ukrainian, for whole Ukraine. And there were actually three events which were very, very important for the future of the country. The first one was G7, where actually was made a historic decision about 50 billion US dollars financing of the state budget for Ukraine over the next 2 years, based on the frozen activa from Russia, or frozen exits from Russia. And I think that's a historic decision which will definitely help Ukraine to survive over the next 2 years. The second big event was the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin, and we will talk about that definitely today. And the third one, of course, was the summit on peace in Switzerland. And I think all of the three events were a huge success for Ukrainian politicians. That was really good week for us because I know that Ukrainian government, including all their institutions, Office of the President, but also Parliament. They have done a lot to get such kind of good results from all three events. Ukraine became again on the agenda globally. There are a lot of talks about Ukraine. The whole world sees what is going on currently in Ukraine, not only on the battlefield, but also in the economy. And I think more attention on Ukrainian problems right now, exactly what we needed. And coming back to their discussion today about Berlin, I think politically was a really success for the country, especially because President Zelensky came. Please don't forget that Germany is one of the largest supporters of Ukraine over the last 2 years. And I think what German government did, it was a great job done organizing the event of 3,000 people under one umbrella with a completely different interest. And I think we have just to thank the German government. All the ministries were present in the conference. During the conference, was a big event with Bundespräsident Steinmeier. The German Chancellor was there. So I think politically it was a great event. To organize such event is a really takes time and huge effort, and we have to thank German government, but not only the German government. We know that also Ukrainian government invested a lot of time, especially the Ministry of Economy. And I think, we have just to say thank you very much for organizing. And we are looking forward for the next event in Rome next year in June in Italy. And I think the idea of that discussion today is actually to be more and better prepared for the next event on recovery conference, because last year in June in London, there was a message from the international community that we have on such events actually to be more attractive for the foreign investors in terms of economic framework in a country, but also political framework, etc. So I think the idea of the event today is to say what was exactly perfect done, what was probably could be improved, and we can use it for the next year. And the third one is based on their experience from agriculture, what we from agriculture community of Ukraine, but not only from Ukraine, can do to organize next year Rome a little bit more better and more efficient in terms of the financing of the agriculture sector of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Yes, it's very important that you and other participants of the Ukraine Recovery Conference felt this, let's say, strong political support, which is really important both in symbolic terms to all of us, to the Ukrainian government, the business and people, but also for larger international community, so that any signs of hesitation, any signs of second thoughts in this very long and grinding war that Russia is trying to make on us, they are squashed in the bud. This is very important, but it's what also is important is to talk specifics. And I would like to turn also to you, Alex, and to by each and every turn to other our distinguished panelists by discussing what was on stake, what was on the table in the Ukraine Recovery Conference. You mentioned, Alex, that 50 billion euro financing under the EU-Ukraine facility was probably the central piece that was reviewed and debated in Berlin. We know that the European Commission unveiled this important package in April. Before that, we had half a year of legislative process where the European regulation for Ukraine facility has been adopted. And we also know that the European Commission used the opportunity in Berlin to conclude approximately 15 arrangements with international financial institutions, with development banks from member states, including KfW from Germany, to start implementing, to use these funds to support recovery in Ukraine. What is it? Why our event is important today? Because we would like to provide certain immediate and live feedback to our partners in Brussels and in Berlin, to the extent how the financial instruments available under the Ukraine facility, those instruments that will back financing from IFIs, from the banks like KfW, the institutions like KfW, whether their size, whether their quality are the right response to the needs of Ukrainian economy at this current stage, in particularly the Ukrainian agriculture sector. To help you even more answer this question, this is the question that business community in Brussels here often asks the European Commission. Or rather, we ask ourselves and then pass the response to the European Commission. Well, what elements in this Ukraine facility approach, or perhaps the financing offered by financial institutions, what elements would help private investors, private lenders trigger the right investment and credit decisions to work with their Ukrainian counterparts? What helps them to move along? What has to be improved from the perspective of a Ukrainian farmer or from a Ukrainian enterprise? Alex, perhaps you want to start the discussion?
Yeah, thank you. I think in terms of the Ukraine facility initiative and Ukrainian integration into the EU, it was actually done a lot from both parties, from the European Union, but also from Ukraine. So Ukrainian government has passed a lot of necessary documents and parliament as well to start negotiations about their accession. And the Ukrainian government has also actually not only developed, but also agreed with European partners their special road map for the integration of the Ukrainian economy into the European Union based on Ukraine facility program. And I think that's a huge success for the both parties. I do believe it was not that easy job for Ukraine, but also for Europe. And that based on those agreements, European Union starts negotiations with Ukraine about the accession to the Europe. And that's I think that's a major message to all of us. It starts, and it's good. Right now, that should be done a lot of things, not only on the political side, but also on economic side, regulation side, but also business side. And I think we have to start working in their working groups based on the Ministry of Economy initiative, Ministry of Agriculture policy initiative to improve the situation in the agriculture sector. If we're coming back to the investors, the message from last year in London was more or less clear. It was said many times by politicians from US, but also from European Union. We need to do everything to attract foreign investors to Ukraine, also in agriculture. So if we come back to the agriculture panel, which was held in Berlin, yeah, there were again a lot of discussions, how can we attract foreign investors? But honestly, we should be also clear that I don't believe that many private investors from foreign countries will come right now to Ukraine to invest into the country because of many reasons. But the first and main reason is actually the war. So from my side was raised the question on their panel discussion, why should we not think about the businesses which are working in Ukraine right now, in agriculture of Ukraine? Why should we not provide their financial instruments for the investments into the new projects in Ukraine for those companies who successfully work in Ukraine right now? Of course, we have commercial banks in Ukraine. Of course, they finance us. But I think for that development in the future, based on the European integration, we need actually much more instruments, starting with project financing or unsecured financial instruments for Ukrainian agriculture sector, ending with private equity funds, not post-war, but during the war. And unfortunately, we have missed such discussions, and probably the platform in Berlin was also not that place because like 3,000 people, huge communication area. I think we should continue work on such kind of instruments of next months to find solutions and to present the solutions next year in Rome.
Thank you very much, Alex. In fact, you're right. You're right. The military risks, the security risks, is the major impediment that holds back either commercial lenders or private investors from working with their Ukrainian counterparts. And let me remind you, colleagues, that one of the elements of the Ukraine facility toolbox that the European Commission offers is lowering the risk, credit guarantees offered in an indirect manner to either international financial institutions that continue to work in Ukraine, or to development banks like KfW, or in Poland, the BGK, which in turn would leverage the toolbox with international private investors or commercial banks. To what extent, colleagues, you think how exactly the risk lowering would work, would be important for you to continue to supporting your operations from your practical perspective? Georg and Katarina, how would you respond to the fact that Commission say, look, we give the IFIs credit guarantees under their financial portfolio, or we can give certain, let's say, grants that facilitate a feasibility study for a particular project that it paves the way for the positive decision. Whether it's enough for you, what would be the other instruments to lower the risk that you would welcome? Perhaps let's start with Katarina, if it's okay.
Yeah, hello everyone. So first of all, I'd like to also agree with Alex that this conference actually was very good. It was good. We didn't have very high expectations to start with, but you know how it went. The messages we learned and heard from politicians and from businesses encourage us and make us work more and believe that this war is going to end soon, and Ukraine is going to be the best place on earth to invest. We all agree. But the war needs to end. And I also agree with Alex that main focus should be on the existing businesses and existing investors in the country now, because only those who already operate in these very difficult circumstances of war, only us are going to continue during the war, and we are ready to invest more, because this is also, it makes a lot of sense for us. For example, buying rail cars, building some facilities for processing. There were lots of things, like talks about biofuels, biogas during the conferences. So those businesses who are existing in Ukraine now and operating in Ukraine now, we all have those projects on our table. And it only depends on how ready we are, and either sort of a financing for those projects and insurance for those projects. Because, without insurance, it's very difficult to make that decision to build a new plant somewhere in the middle of Ukraine that can be destroyed by a drone attack or a rocket, So basically, this conference was very handy and very, very optimistic on one hand, but on the other hand, what was missing maybe is some concrete things, what we can achieve or get before the next conference in Rome. So focus on existing investors, which was also supported by the government of Ukraine, I would say, because the government of Ukraine does amazing job, not only organizing the conferences, but also what they do for the businesses inside Ukraine. For example, in recent months, they liberalized, allowed businesses to send dividends abroad, which also helped a lot for business climate. We reimburse VAT during the war, and it works like a clock, Today, I'm receiving VAT for April exports, which is like amazing, without any problem. That is also a work of government. And the third thing that government does for businesses, and what also supports businesses, that government understands that agricultural sector is very important, and they allow us to keep people working, and 50% of our employees can be sort of, reserved from military services during the season, which is very important for us. Otherwise, we would stop. So basically, the efforts of the government, the efforts of the IFIs and the international community, the messages from the politicians everything worked together and it was very positive. So basically, I cannot say that something was missing, but I would say that we always want better. We always want better, and we are only as good as our last conference. So basically, next conference needs to be even better. That's from my side.
Thank you, Katerina. We will come back to the role of the Ukrainian government a bit later today, but now turning to Georg. Georg, perhaps you would like to add something from your perspective, also considering that you bring to Ukraine, Western expertise, Western look at how things are being done here, but you would also had already a reality check in the way how Ukrainians cope and prosper in difficult circumstances. So back to you, Georg, regarding the quality, the realistic approach of financing offered by the Europeans. What would you say?
So good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me on this call. Not from the middle of foggy Brussels, but from Ukraine, with heading towards, I guess, 30 degrees during the course of the day. We've got the combines going in the background, which I think is exactly the comment that was made. Business is working even under the difficult circumstances that we've got, and that's immensely important. It's immensely important for the country. It's immensely important to keep the economy going. It's important to keep taxes, to get foreign currency in, which agriculture is one of the main contributors through the exports. Katarina has just mentioned the exports are working. The financial institutions of Ukraine are supporting us. So that is all on the plus side. And to answer your opening question, is the glass half full or half empty? I would dare to say it's more than half full. But there's a couple of things I think that now come from political signals that need to be drawn into concrete action. I think I welcome generally the fact that there is a shift from a grant-focused approach towards investment support. Because that is, from my perspective, what is going to guarantee and allow for a longer term support for Ukraine. We all understand that a pure grant based approach will eventually lead to all kinds of questions in the West, and I think the West has understood it. But equally, the Western partners of Ukraine have understood that it is immensely important to support the government, to support the economy, and that's I think for me the key takeaway, that if we look at the instruments that were just mentioned, whether it's the MEGA instrument from the World Bank, whether it's the instruments developed by the Polish government, whether it is guarantee schemes that are being developed by the German government, for example, which just have allowed a major investment of an existing player in Ukraine in additional seed production facilities. This is what is going to unlock the willingness of existing business to continue to invest. All of the businesses in Ukraine, and I'm looking at Katarina, I'm looking at Alex, I'm looking at ourselves. We had strategies in place that we wanted to implement already pre-war, and to various degrees, depending on how the situation allowed. And we've all continued to implement these strategies, because the volatility of the war, the volatility of Corona, we must not forget Corona right before the war, the volatilities have all shown us that the strategic approaches for Ukrainian agriculture in terms of added value, in terms of covering bigger parts of, have been right. So this is what continues to be the right approach to be implemented. The business models work, and they work. That is important, no matter whether we talk about a war scenario or whether we talk about a peace scenario, because the concept of having a business model that is just wartime focused will eventually be very fragile. But we are all exposed to the risks that Katarina mentioned, which is war risk. And that is for sure one big element which not necessarily holds back equity investment of existing business, but it definitely holds back the commercial banks to support these investment projects. And I think where I'm positive but also cautious about the implementation is, if we look at these war risk insurances, if we look at the instruments that are being implemented to secure new investments and existing investments from war risks, then we need to be very clear that these will be measured by the implementation. This will be measured by the ease of access. And to have a clear understanding about the underlying processes in a conference of 3,000 people is obviously quite difficult. And I think it's all our job now to make sure that the great concepts, the great ideas that we've heard in Berlin do not just end up somewhere in working shape for a long time, but actually are being implemented. There's a clear understanding from the business what it takes to get access to these war risk insurances. And I'm very sure if I look at the businesses around us, and I'm also looking at ourselves, there is a desire to continue to invest in Ukraine. There's a clear understanding that Ukraine is a very, very important and extremely competitive player on the international agriculture market. And it's definitely something that existing business wants to continue to leverage. Mm-hmm. However, and that's the other element, we've heard the numbers in Berlin about the need for economic recovery. We've heard the numbers that are scarily high billion numbers. So I think the second line of approach to bring in new FDI into Ukraine is something that in the long-term run will be very important for the recovery of the Ukrainian economy as a whole, and also the Ukrainian, I wouldn't call it agriculture, but agribusiness as such, that there will be a need to bring in more FDI, to bring in more support and economic build-up to bring the economy to full recovery. One element, and that is connected to this is where I would see in the midterm and long-term run a very important task of the Ukrainian government is to form conditions that allow a lot of Ukrainians and a lot of very, very highly educated Ukrainians who've left the country to return to Ukraine and actually occupy the workplaces that these investments will allow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Georg. In fact, yes, we understand that we need to talk about a bit larger outlook for risks that agribusiness has to take into account when operating in Ukraine. We understand, of course, the military risk is paramount, but there are other considerations that obviously you take into account in your business strategies, but also which you would advise to your peers or to prospective partners, be it investors, be it commercial lenders that would like to consider supporting you and share with your future success. So I wonder whether we can quickly have a look at other, let's say, risk areas beside military risk, so that we are on a realistic footing, but at the same time, you would be able to explain why you continue to be optimistic, why do you continue to call Ukraine the best place to do business, at least in the area of agriculture. So I'm talking about logistical costs, I'm talking about access to labor, and probably also regaining or expanding access to European and global markets. Are we happy with these areas? Do we really see them as risks rather than as opportunities? I would be grateful if you can comment on this broader view, because I think the conference also addressed these aspects, not only purely financial ones. Who would like to start?
Probably I will start again. Yeah, you raised really very important question, and there are a lot of discussions about the investments into the food industry in Ukraine, because of many reasons. The reason was the problems with export via Black Sea. The reason was also that the logistic costs are very high in Ukraine. The reason was also that we need more value-added products in Ukraine. And there have been discussions about 3 years, how can we increase the number of or how can we invest actually in the value-added chain in Ukraine. And I think all the discussions are very important and real. And I think exactly that point was kind of not really discussed there in Berlin in generally, because all of them are also linked in some way to the question of the agreement with European Union and with our Polish, but not only Polish friends. And as you know, right now, we have actually more or less a predictable route for export of the commodities via Odessa. And it's everything works quite well. The logistic costs sunk. It's also quite good. But the question is still open. How can we increase the investments into the value-added products? And the value-added products, on the one hand, we need the long-term investments opportunities. And I've said that we unfortunately don't have such like that. And secondly, we need also predictable markets. And that is probably the next question also is, how predictable is the market with European Union in terms of the all negotiations and all the problems with farmers in European Union, problems with all the lobby groups which don't like to have Ukrainian products. And unfortunately, they are also not professional discussions. What's going to happen with European Union when Ukraine became the member of the European Union? And such kind of open questions, unfortunately, still not answered. And I think we have to find solutions over next months as well, because it's not a big secret. We have the current agreement with European Union, ATM, only for 1 year. What's going to happen after 1 year, we don't know. Then another one question is also what's going to happen actually with our Polish friends. Right now, they don't block the border, but all the products which we deliver to European Union, most of them, they go through Poland. What happens actually in the autumn again, we don't know, because Polish friends are also quite unpredictable, unfortunately for us. And I think there are still a lot of questions, and I do believe that we need to find solutions as soon as possible, because that directly affects also the investments into the food industry of Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you. Georg or Katerina?
Ladies first.
Okay, then I jump here because I like the topic of logistics. So I'll touch that. So we, all three of us, are in a very good mood, not only because, the harvest is approaching and it's going to be good in Ukraine, but also because Ukraine showed how resilient we are and how strong we are in terms of how we operate logistically in these very difficult circumstances. So basically, during first 2 years of war, once...
Please continue, Katerina.
I'm sorry, there's some kind
Please
of
continue.
distraction here. So during the 2 years of war, do you hear?
Yeah, we hear you very well.
Yeah. So during the first 2 years of war, we've been operating in the situation where we produce world-class grain from same seeds, same materials, same fertilizers. So basically, we spend the same amount of money as Polish farmers, for example, and then we spend for logistics 100 euro more compared to Polish farmer, and we still survive and we still continue our operations. And Ukraine, during the first 2 years of war, we had a discount on Ukrainian origin for grains, approximately $50 per ton. This was very unfair, but we still continue. So basically, what it shows to me and for others, that Ukrainian agriculture is very strong and resilient. We operate in very difficult circumstances. We get less money for the same quality product, and we still continue, and that also shows that Ukraine after the war is going to be even better, and this grain basket that we're going to be even bigger for the world. So basically, of course, it's very difficult to explain Polish farmers or Romanian farmers in a decrease of price or world price why Ukrainian grain is not guilty for the decrease of price, but there's something else on the reason of that price decrease on one hand, and it's very difficult to have those negotiations. But on the other hand, what is positive is that Ukraine can survive in a very difficult situation. So logistical costs and logistical challenges didn't kill us, but made us stronger in this case. And that's my point.
Thank you. Georg?
I'd like to skip the logistics because Katarina has covered it all. I'd like to pick up on one point that Alex mentioned, which is a clear understanding and an outlook how markets for us in the future will look inside the European Union. And I'd like to expand that point a little bit. I don't think it's only about the market. I think it's in a wider term, it's about the general political and regulatory background that we're going to face in the future. It was very clear in Berlin that we are facing and I welcome that a trend towards the European Union, that there is a road to eventual accession to the European Union, and that is a plus. But we need to be very clear that most likely agriculture is going to be the most difficult topic to discuss, because what we'll see in this process is a massive clash of two systems. I've operated inside the European Union. I've also now operated for 6 years outside of the European Union. So I do believe I've got an understanding of both. The European Union has built a system that is very protective for their farmers for a long row of years. Whilst, as you're well aware, in Ukraine, we're completely depending on the market. We are not subsidized. And actually, I do believe that a lot of Ukrainian farmers, not only big companies, but also smaller farmers, medium-sized farmers, they're quite proud to be able to be competitive on a global scale without being subsidized. And there will have to be a very clear roadmap and a very clear understanding between all involved parties, meaning governments on the European side as well on the Ukrainian side, but equally on the farm side, that this is not going to be a one-way road. There will have to be a learning process on both sides that will implement regulatory requirements of the European Union as part of the accession. We one system and one market. But on the other hand, we need to have an understanding that there's a lot that European farmers can learn from Ukrainian agriculture about building competitive resilient systems in terms of being very competitive on a global scale. And the important question is that very soon we will need a roadmap that shows how both regulatory compliance towards European standards is going to be established versus probably an easing of certain requirements inside the European Union, because otherwise it's not going to be financeable for everybody. So that that business understands what to get ready for. We will eventually be in a red anyway. We've seen that with the accession of Poland, Romania, the Czech Republic, etc., towards the European Union. But we need to have a roadmap that shows us what are the requirements, how they're going to build up, and on the other hand, what is in it for the business. Because otherwise, how will you invest? If you are talking about payback times for certain investments that are beyond 10 years, if you're not clear about the regulatory that you're going to be facing in 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Georg. I think we are slowly, let's say, building the case for our next theme of our webinar. It's because the framework you're referring to, dear Georg, is the EU, the Ukraine's pre-accession negotiations with the EU. That would be the framework that will eventually put us, in a very strict but predictable perspective of applying EU legislation in full. There will be probably no exceptions, but obviously some transitional periods to take account of wartime realities in Ukraine. And this is where Ukrainian business has to adapt to. But we all understand very well that the ultimate price for this effort of adaptation would be enormous. We will be a part of the EU internal market. The European farmers or agri-food processing industry does not look at us as aliens, but rather one of them. And in this way, we will be able to contribute to European food security and, let's say, food sovereignty. This is the buzzword we now hear today very often in Brussels. But before we get, I think we will put the issue of the topic of Ukraine's accession to the EU through the lens of agriculture for another day. I want to now get back a little bit to our government, to the Ukrainian government. It was very pleasant today to hear words of praise from each and every one of you regarding our colleagues who work in the ministries in Kyiv. I think our government also did a very good job in the conference by presenting a coherent, convincing, and detailed picture of the reform agenda they would like to pursue in support, being supported by the international donor community. At least I have studied very carefully the conference website with projections of a reform agenda offered by various branches of government. It looks very impressive, but I would like to say that, let's say, to give our viewers a chance to hear from you directly. In your opinion, what are the three most important, let's say, deliverables or strength or benefits that Ukrainian agriculture business clearly sees from the Ukrainian government at this moment? And also, let's say, three areas where you would like to say that the Ukrainian government still has to improve, considering even these difficult circumstances. I think such an analysis could be also very helpful for our potential partners, being financial lenders or international investors. Who would like to answer?
I think ladies first.
Please, Katerina.
Thank you, boys. So government.
Three pluses and three areas of improvement, in your opinion.
You know, all of us in our careers in Ukraine, we heard from a couple governments about reforms, and we know how difficult it is sometimes to approach this kind of, you know, process, and how to implement, how to deliver. And the pressure the government is under now is enormous. Nobody knows how difficult it is for them. So my only word would be thank you. And I was really impressed. I was really impressed, you know, what they did for the conference, what they do for economics of Ukraine, because economy needs to run. Everybody understands that, and that's a priority number one of a president, of a government, of a people of Ukraine, and of businesses. And this consensus, you know, it was obvious during the conference, and that's all three pluses goes to this. You know, the main sort of message was that economy needs to run, and that is a priority. And all they do is actually they do to support us as an agribusiness, starting from military support, opening Black Sea for grain exports, for example. That is a huge support for economy, because without the Black Sea we cannot, you know, ship our grain. We do not have any logistical sort of benefits or sort of logistical routes how we can do this easy, cheap, and fast for the world. And agriculture of Ukraine would simply decrease, die, you know, will not exist without the Black Sea route. And government and military and army, all those people, you know, who worked on that did a great job. So Black Sea, plus number one, VAT refund, plus number two, banking system that works, plus number three, reservation of people, four, you know, many things. And also we have a very open dialogue, I must admit, with this government. So basically, when we have a problem as association, as a businesses, you know, they're really easy reachable, they're answering, they understand our concerns. So I cannot say that I'm disappointed in any aspect. I actually thankful for this.
Thank you, Katerina. Very optimistic signal. Anyone wants to comment and add to that?
I would like just to add a few words and say in the same direction what Katerina said. You know, we've been in a business and we've been working for the last 3 years under such pressure. But we actually cannot plan. We have the planning horizon for us is like about 2-3 weeks. There is a huge, really mentally is quite difficult to do something, and doesn't matter are you working in the Western Ukraine, Eastern, or on the North. You have every day huge pressure from different parts. Not only, and we don't speak about government, so that's not about the government. And I think, you know, like before we start to criticize the government or the president or the office of the president, we should just think on which pressure they've been working. The president, his office, and the government, that's a huge pressure. I don't say they are tired, but if you see how difficult for them is to put on the reform agenda some issues, society is also, the people in Ukraine, they're also working under such huge pressure every day, working and doing their business and going to the school, etc., etc. And I think, before criticize, we just need to understand the whole life where we are, what we are doing, and how difficult to make a step in terms of doing some kind of reforms forward. I just wanted to mention one example about the land market. The land market has been discussed for 30 years and introduced in 2021, or passed, the law passed in 2021, and the second stage of the land market should actually have started 2024. And can you imagine, before the start of land reform, what kind of discussions did we have in the country? So it's not on the time, that's not important, we don't need it, and that, and that, and that. And I think that just one of the examples how difficult to push the reforms during the war, with people which are a little bit tired, honestly say it, and businesses which are trying to fight every day, and that's a fight about survivance. We of course we try to invest, of course we do something in different areas, but every day it's a big fight about surviving of business, of the people who work for business, of the countryside, because we every year pay our leases to the people which are working and living there. So, and I think before we do make our great recommendations, we just need to think about that. And I think I do completely agree with Katerina that we have a direct contact to the government, not only on the government of Ukraine, but also local government. So they are open for the discussions. We have also very good contacts to the military forces of Ukraine, because everyone supports military forces, and that we know how it looks difficult with mobilization, with that. And I think we should be keeping the peace in the country, do recommendations based on the professional level, where we really see that could be improved easily, and that will be no damage for the government, but also for the country.
Thank you, Alex.
Nazar, I think we have a question there. Just
no, I think, yes, for the benefit of the audience, I would like to tell everyone that we will have a Q&A session in the end of our discussion, and everyone will be able to ask questions to our panelists. Please use Q&A window for these purposes. But I think Georg wants to add anything, or please let us know, Georg.
I think if we talk about the three pluses, the major success and pluses, that's something that we start to take as given, because we're talking about recovery here. We're talking about investment into Ukraine. The government has managed, together with an amazingly resilient Ukrainian population, to keep the country running and operating for the last 3 years, with, I think, it's fair to say, a wide assumption that this is going to be a war for 3 days, and Ukraine has proven everybody wrong. And that's a major success of the country and the government. Point number one. Point number two, from my perspective, for the overall economy, opening the logistics routes through the ports is a major success, and that is something that cannot be emphasized enough, because that is the most competitive route, not only for agricultural products, but also for incoming and outgoing other products. Point number three, it's accessibility and its openness to support the business in all kinds of matters, being listening to problems, be it VAT returns that are crucial for the cash flow situation, etc. So these are my three major pluses. The minuses I would not like to call minuses. I would rather call them areas of further
improvement,
further push, because these are not necessarily improvement, but keep the focus on these areas. One is we need to be continuing talking about deregulating. getting building permissions, getting outlying planning permissions for projects is still a very, very difficult process in Ukraine, especially when you've got to connect building permissions, gas access, electricity access, and rail access into one site. It's a very difficult process, and it's not business friendly. So please keep pushing that direction. And this comes back into the ease of doing business in Ukraine and bringing FDI in and encouraging existing investors to invest. That's point number one. Keep the reform track that Ukraine has set out. That is the most important thing that Ukraine can do, from my perspective, for its recovery. And thirdly, most importantly, make sure that Ukraine prevails, that Ukraine wins in this war, because that is the only way to secure a long-term peace.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Georg. In fact, there are two things that really impressed me. First, the singing of birds in your window behind your screen. It really shows that you are very blessed. We should be grateful to the Ukrainian government that we can work in such conditions of relative peace and tranquility, thanks to our armed forces. And second, in fact, I think this is the most convincing message that anyone from international investors can hear, not from the government, but even from the Ukrainian business, who share their frank views about the business climate in Ukraine. I'm really proud to hear that. Let's move on to our next and probably the final topic of our discussion. The Ukrainian agricultural sector, as virtually any other sector of the Ukrainian economy, is known for its innovation. It's famous for its forward-looking approach. We are always on a constant lookout for the next big thing, which should allow us to minimize risks, to diversify, to maintain profitability and long-term prospects. So my question is to you, our dear colleagues, what do you think is the next big thing in the Ukrainian agricultural sector? Which new areas of innovation or added value you see in the medium to long term? For instance, there is already a tip, biofuels could be one of them. Do you identify any other areas which you have on your mind and in fact you would like to share with prospective partners or investors from the world? Who would like to take the floor?
I'd be happy to start. I think it's very important to understand competitive angles, and we've touched upon it. An understanding where we are going politically is really important. I don't think we are talking about direct competition into the European Union, and I think that's a clear message that we need to understand. But there is great added value that can come out of Ukraine with the right political parameters and the right understanding about long-term sustainability of investment. It's around biofuel, it's around bioethanol, it's potentially around biomethane, using low quality grain or non-food products waste in the country.
Georg, I apologize for interrupting you. We lost you a little bit. If you can repeat from the point you referred to low quality grain, if you can repeat again what you have said, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me again?
Yes, now we hear you better.
So it's about usage of low quality grain or any waste products into biofuels, biomethane. It is about being a long-term stable supply of protein into the European Union, which the European Union actually imports a lot. And with a right political understanding, with an understanding of which markets we can access, there's no need to have a discussion around competition on grain markets or something like that. They will find its place through the Black Sea ports in the right regions of the world. But Ukraine can become a very stable long-term supplier of protein, of soya meal, of various other protein products into the European Union, which Europe needs a lot and imports a lot.
Thank you, Georg. Who would like to add to that, colleagues?
I think I think I just can add a few words. I think I do fully agree with Georg that very important for us is to understand where we're going to. And I do understand we're going to the European Union, and that opens actually a lot of new possibilities. And I don't want to repeat about bioenergy, etc. But I think there are a lot of investments and there are a lot of possibilities also in an area of sustainability, ESG, bioproducts, etc. And that's like it opens the door for the investments in the know-how actually in those directions where Ukrainians probably were not that strong. But I think we can do it very easily, especially because we have a high level of digitalization in agriculture, but not only in agriculture. We have very good educated people, and especially for the post-war, based on those experiences with drones and all the stuff what we're doing right now in the military area, I think we can easily use it also for the agriculture. So I think that that door to Europe opens for us a lot of new possibilities, but we have to see the long-term perspective for that. And I'm pretty sure that Ukrainians will manage that very, very efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Katerina?
Yeah, in terms of innovations, I would say that agriculture sector is one of the most advanced in the country. It was before the war, it is during the war, and that is why we're so resilient and we keep on going for harvesting now, third year in a row in these circumstances. So basically, digitally, we are very advanced. To be honest, we have a big competitive advantage that we have large farms, large fields, big scale operations, and that makes us our product cheaper in terms of production, but not necessarily of a bad quality. I disagree with that thesis of a bad quality. Of course, sometimes there are some here and there, some rains, extra rains or something happening, or during the war, some grain is stuck in the train for 4 months, and that's make the quality, bad. But otherwise, we use same fertilizers as a European farmer, same seeds of a world-class producers, same crop protection, and do everything according to the rules. So we have non-GMO soya production in the country, and our product is a world-class product, which is in many cases cheaper than the product from neighboring countries. That's why it's super difficult to negotiate politically with the European Union farmers. But that doesn't mean that that product that they do not need in European Union cannot go via the Black Sea to other countries and cannot feed the world, So basically our product has markets, has clients, and we're very sure that the excessive volumes of grains that are produced in Ukraine, if they're not needed in Europe, they will find lots of customers and buyers and demand in the rest of the world. And that's our mission. And, politically, I'm sure that we're gonna, negotiate correctly, and all countries surrounding Ukraine and in the world are gonna only benefit from that. It's gonna be a win-win situation with the Polish farmers, with the Romanian farmers, with African farmers, and Middle East and the rest of the world. So Ukraine is not the threat. Ukraine is a big, benefit of this world, that we produce so much of grain and we can feed the world. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Katerina. We have moved to the end of our, let's say, discussion topics, and now it's time for questions from our audience. Let's start from those questions that have been posted online, and I do encourage our listeners, as we still have some time, to post your questions in the Q&A chat window in this link. So first question is from Alphonse Ballman. Do you see opportunities to reduce policy-driven business risks, such as protests by Polish farmers? Can Ukrainian business address sensitive issues that were the reason for the protests, or is it mainly an issue for Ukrainian and European politicians? Who would like to take the floor on this?
Now, maybe me again. Alphonse, you know that there are a lot of discussions around Europe about the Ukrainian imports. Unfortunately, the majority of those discussions based on the emotionally driven understanding of role of Ukrainian production in Europe, and mostly really emotionally driven discussions, not based on the facts or assumptions or numbers or something like that. That's what we have to change. How to change? That's a different question, because I've been to many bilateral discussions with Polish institutions, but not only, also with Germans. I think for the politicians it's a very difficult job, because as you see across Europe, there are movements, radical movements among the voters. And I think for the current politicians, it's really too difficult to explain to the farmers what's going to happen, how to happen with Green Deal, and with Ukrainian membership, that we need actually to change completely the agriculture policy of Europe, which was based on the assumption that we have to do something for income in rural areas for the farmers, and was based somewhere in 50s. And that's a kind of really huge challenge for Europe. And unfortunately, if you start to talk to the people there and explain from our side that it's not problem in Ukraine, even without Ukraine, it would be difficult to secure the income in the rural areas for the European farmers, because they are not competitive, unfortunately. And doesn't matter do they have a Green Deal rules or not the Green Deal rules. Ukraine is not Ukraine. It's generally difficult for them. And I think that's the very hard job for not only politicians in Europe, but also especially for the researchers and universities, because that's exactly the input that we do expect from our partners in Europe. The researchers are independent, so please start the discussion there and start to talk about what's going to happen, how can be the common agriculture policy with Ukraine, what can be contributed by Ukraine to change and improve the policy mechanisms in Europe. And that's a very important issue. There is really huge need for discussions. But once again, we would like to, from the business side, we would like to lead the discussion into the more professional one, based on the numbers and expectations and their strategy for the next 30, 50, 40 years, I don't know, but not for the horizon of 2-3 years, because that makes no sense, actually.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alex. In fact, that the word of science, the word of facts and figures should speak louder than emotions. Georg, you would like to add anything?
Yes, very much so. I mean, if we look at the drivers of the protesters and pushback around European agriculture, I mean, it's an onion, right? It's got a lot of skins. And I think one important reason, one important driver, is to peel away the layers of this onion, and drive it down to external factors that are actually not influenced by Ukraine. So it's the discussions around the Green Deal in Europe and the impacts on farms. It's the discussion around rising energy prices for farmers. These are all completely disconnected from a Ukraine discussion. And then there's a Ukraine discussion to be had, which is exactly around how does the future common agriculture policy around I would like to remind all of us that we've had, and I remember this because I was during that time operating in the Czech Republic, when the Czech Republic joined, when Poland joined, when Romania joined. The discussions were exactly the same. The fears were exactly the same. The Romanian farmers, the Polish farmers, the Czech farmers are going to completely ruin the common agricultural policy. It's going to be extremely difficult for the foreign for the Western European agriculture, for the old EU, let's call it, and nothing has happened. So let's remove part of the populism through a very objective scientific discussion, during which we all understand that finally we're talking about a product that reaches a market, and on that market we already are together with European farmers, together with Ukrainian farmers, and remembering the discussions around the EU entry of Romania, of the Czech Republic, of Poland, etc. We need to be very aware that these things always look a lot scarier than they actually turn out.
Thank you. Katarina, would you like to add your 50 cents to the discussion?
My 50 cents is that, those discussions that I've been participating in were, as colleagues said, super emotional. And, we are also very good in drama. So there is a drama now in our life, So if we talk emotional, that nobody can be more emotional than us, So better go to numbers. I agree to Alex's science and, some kind of, less emotional approach, because, it will not lead us to a good result. That's my 50 cents.
Thank you, Katarina. Then we have another question, very, let's say, local, Ukraine-centered, from Tatiana, from one of our listeners. Do you currently feel a shortage of specialists in the agricultural sector? And if yes, what kind of specialists are in short supply? I think this is a very simple question, but still a very important one. Who would like to take the floor quickly?
Yeah, I can start.
Please.
Ukraine is a huge country. And the shortage of personnel really depends on where you sit, where you work, where you operate. So basically, the discussion comes into where are you? If you are closer to Russian border or to the field of war, are you working in Zaporizhia, Kherson, you're working in Dnipropetrovsk or Kharkiv, that's going to be one answer, and it's going to be very unpleasant answer, because yes, the shortage is huge. You cannot get people there because either people went to fight, or people moved out because of the children and families, and they're in a more secure places. So basically there's a very difficult situation. And also on the front of outsource, like it used to be like you can outsource some services, like truck drivers come to Kharkiv to pick up some grain, harvesters come from Crimea to the northern parts of Sumy to harvest some grains. Now it's super difficult, so you need to have lots of machinery yourself if you operate some lands, and you need to have your people to operate those pieces of machinery. So depending on where you are, if you're in Kiev, for example, around Kiev, of course it's much easier, because people are in the capital of the city, capital city, it's protected. We have a good air defense, so basically it's much more secure. If you're where Georg is now, probably closer to Lviv or Ternopil, situation is different there, because it's a little bit more far away from the front line, and probably people stay where they used to be living before the war. So basically, really depends on where you are. As a company, we started a school which we call Tractor East, and we actually established this project in 2016. Long before the war. So the idea of the school was to retrain retired military people who maybe have some injuries from the front line, because we have war for more than 10 years now. So basically we had those people, and we had that project. So people who were in the military returned to their normal life. They want to change their job, and they want to operate their large machinery. So we've been retraining those tractor drivers, ex-military, on our facilities since 2016. So we continue to do that. So now we're also taking girls, who we retrain to be a tractor driver or a truck driver. This is not super easy, because to be retrained from some other job to become a tractor driver, you need to spend 9 months 9 months on the farm. Quit your normal job, sacrifice your life, come to the farm and stay there for 9 months to learn how to drive the modern machinery. But we still do those projects. They are costly, they need some grants, sponsors, donors, our participation, but we do that because we need more people to support economy and to keep it running. That's what we
Very
do.
interesting. Very interesting insight, Katerina. Thank you. I think we had a very good answer on this question. We are quickly approaching the end of our webinar, but we still have written questions that were sent by our listeners before the discussion. I will present all three, the most, let's say, common questions. One is, how is the Ukrainian agri-food sector addressing sustainability and climate change issues in its practices? Second, whether Ukrainian government pursues or is in need of a regional agricultural policy to address differences in the region in terms of agriculture. What is your thinking about this? And the third question is there any dedicated financing or support programs for planned for agricultural machinery, for acquisition or service of agricultural machinery by the business? So these are the three questions. Unfortunately, we do not have much more time to take more of them, but I think we would be grateful if you could also touch on these three. Who would like to pick them?
I'll pick up the first one, and probably the colleagues then to the others. So just sustainability and climate change, few words. As I said before, we are fighting every day about surviving. And that time, honestly said, the majority of the farmers in Ukraine, they have no idea about their sustainability, or they do not care much about that. That's honestly said. At the same time, they have, for companies like IMC or AgroRegion or Continental Farmers or Kernel or, I don't know, MHP, they are public companies listed on stock exchanges, or they do provide audited international audits, or they do work with international banks and IFIs. And that's obligatory for us to use some components of sustainability and climate change, etc. And that's a quite tough job, honestly say, especially during the war, because that needs a lot of time. We do spend a lot of time and money to do that right now. So short answer, yes and no. Companies which work internationally use the international credits, financial instruments. They do a lot of things based on sustainability and climate change. The majority of small and medium-sized companies in agriculture, I do suppose they don't think about that right now.
Thank you. Thank you for the fair answer. Georg or Katerina, would you like to add anything from your experience?
I think I would maybe add one thing around ESG and sustainability. I mean, I support Alex's points that for a lot of the businesses, it's not on the radar. But we've touched upon one thing previously, and that's really important in terms of having the base to establish ESG ratings in terms of establishing certification schemes, generate carbon certificates, etc. The Ukrainian agriculture, compared to many other agriculture industries, both inside the EU and in other non-EU countries, is actually bottom line extremely data driven, and that's the base, that's the foundation to allow yourself to achieve ESG ratings and generate for the future carbon certificates. So even if it's not on the agenda right now, I think that more or less accidentally Ukraine brings a lot of the base parameters to very quickly achieve certain targets around ESG ratings, sustainability, and traceabilities, which are all on the agenda. And I think there's generally an understanding in the agricultural sector, which is slowly also filtering through to small and medium-sized farmers that we cooperate quite a bit in our region with, that these elements will eventually come. It will take time. But the base, the foundation of data-driven decision-making is there, data recordings.
If I may, and just a comment on that, many sustainability trends make lots of sense in current situation in Ukraine. For example, solar panels. Like every farmer is now thinking how to be electricity independent, at least at some kind of amount of the business. So basically, for us, during the war, we've been installing solar panels massively on every object we have that we can install solar panels, which is good for, sustainability, but it also makes lots of sense for business. Same goes to pellets, for example, to be independent of, from gas, We don't want to be dependent on gas tube from Russia. So basically what we did, we've been, doing reconstruction of all our dryers for corn and grains, and now we are 100% independent of gas, So basically those trends still continue to work, even though farmers do not have it in their heads maybe, but they have it every morning. The farmer wakes up, he thinks, if the electricity is off, what I'm gonna do? So maybe I should install solar panels, or maybe I should do the pellet dryer because I don't have gas, maybe in autumn. So basically those trends are blooming now. And we do not speak about it like, ESG or sustainability, but we more say it makes lots of sense for us and decreases risks, So again, positive development on that side.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me quickly reflect on what I heard from you, colleagues. I think we are picking up on a very important conclusion from this latest debate is that, in fact, the main drivers of sustainability, of introducing high standards of sustainability and environmental protection in Ukrainian agriculture are usually larger Ukrainian agricultural enterprises for a very simple reason. Because of their international exposure, because of their let's say export-oriented approach, and their greater awareness how important the sustainability and ESG, let's say, standards are not only for, let's say, more environmentally conscious business practices, but also for in order to avoid or minimize regulatory and policy risks. I think this is a very remarkable conclusion that we can draw today. But please continue. Who would like to comment on regional approach, regional policy in agriculture, or machinery financing? Any thoughts?
I think regional policy. I don't know what that actually what is exactly behind, because there are no big difference between the regions.
I think, Alex, if I may interrupt you, I think probably we can answer this question by referring by the big discrepancies we have, for instance, between frontline regions and so-called rear regions. Maybe you, from your experience, because I know your land is basically a frontline region land. Do you think that the government, or most importantly international donors, should address this growing gap? What do you think?
That's a good question. I would not say right now that there are huge difference, once again, between the regions in terms of the policy, between the regions like in Kharkiv, Donetsk, or Chernihiv, or Rivne. I do not see big differences there. The only one difference is we do speak about the policy. The only one difference is, and that's a governmental decree, they do support the companies of the de-occupied territories, or they work on the de-occupied territories. So that's a one difference, and they are special interest rates, and the state banks work on that. That's another one issue. So shortly, there are no regional policy based on or actual link to the agriculture. And the second question about the technique and machinery, I mean, if you are bankable, if you're working transparently, you can easily go to the commercial bank in Ukraine and get money for buying of technique and equipment with more or less good interest rates. So I don't see the big problem. The technique is available. The loans are available if you are bankable, once again. That's not that big problem for everybody.
Thank you, Alex. Does anyone want to add anything to this topic, or shall we move to the last question we just got on our Q&A chat window?
Maybe let's look at the machinery grants from one angle, which is important to keep in mind. We've just had a discussion around what a subsidized agricultural sector leads to. We've just had a discussion around the EU subsidies. So if you've got a competitive sector with bankable business, and there is a lot in Ukraine of bankable business, then let's not lure ourselves into, and I specifically exclude recovery requirements for deoccupied territories, demining, etc. That's a different category. Damaged machinery it has been damaged due to fighting, to bombing, to any other war-related risks. But if we look at the standard Ukrainian business that hasn't had any war impacts on its premises, and let's keep in mind that's a vast territory of Ukraine. We're talking three quarters of not directly war impacted business, and then let's not lure ourselves into a subsidized agricultural sector. That's just the discussion that we had. That leads to the discussions that we're having with the EU right now. That leads to a non-competitive agricultural sector. So I'm very cautious about a generalized request for grants on machinery, with the exemption, and I would like to flag that again, of recovery related due to war damage.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Georg. We're moving to the last question of our session, which came in fact from a listener from a reports upon team in the Ministry of the Economy. So it's important. We are very glad to understand that we are being watched by our colleagues in the Economy Ministry. And the question is as follows. The results of the conference also recorded a significant amount on sponsorship and donor assistance. Do Ukrainian agricultural businesses use some kind of common database of such financial opportunities, or it's updated independently? If so, probably our listener is referring to whether we have a good integrated knowledge of various tools of donor assistance available, or whether it's fragmented and something should be done about it. What do you think, colleagues?
I think what we know actually very efficiently works in Ukraine USAID project. There are actually 3 of them. And what we've seen, they have really, good established team in Ukraine, but also in Warsaw. And we work with them, and that works is not only about their donations. So that work is also linked to the issues of the human capital. And today we have in the afternoon actually the again discussion about the human capital, how we can educate, introduce new instruments, etc., etc. So from my perspective, I do see really the one institution is USAID, which helps really. Not only with donations or support, but also with non-financial instruments, which help us also a lot.
Thank you, Alex. Anyone else to add?
I agree with Alex, because, this is the only institution that is organized in a way that it's kind of, very transparently sort of showing the opportunities to all kinds of players. Other initiatives are sometimes coming, but then you spend lots of time negotiating, how this product or something can be, organized, and then in 90% of cases, unfortunately, it doesn't lead to any kind of success. So basically, institutionally, this grant help or some kind of, donors help sometimes is not organized at all. And, it's more like discussions, what can be done? Let's design some product, maybe in 10 years or 5 years it's going to work, but nothing on the table right now. And we as a country and as business need something now, because many areas of Ukraine are damaged, destroyed, as Georg said, those who unfortunately suffered huge damages in terms of machinery, rail cars, trucks, everything, they need replacement, and they do not have money or means or anything to go to the bank and take that loan, so they don't have collateral. So basically those kind of businesses damaged by war, they need support now, otherwise they're just going to disappear. and it's going to happen very fast. So basically, support now is needed, but it's not designed yet by many parties who are interested to help, but unfortunately not ready institutionally, unfortunately. Only USAID so far. Very
Okay.
Thank you.
Georg, you would like to add anything, or?
I think both Alex and Katarina have covered everything, so it would be repetition.
Very good. Thank you very much. I think this is a very concerning signal to the European donors, to the European financial institutions, because it's USAID, which is, let's say, springs to the mind of Ukrainian agricultural business and enterprises, and not the European Investment Bank, maybe BRD, or European Commission funded projects. This is something for them to consider, and also for our colleagues at the Ministry of Economy to pass on this message to them, that they should be more prominent in terms of communication. Thank you very much. I think it was a very interesting discussion, a very informative one. We discussed today the general view, the outcomes, and the appraisal of the Recovery Conference in Berlin. We looked at the role the Ukrainian government plays and played, not only in terms of reform effort, but also in how specifically the government supports Ukrainian agriculture business in times of war, in times of prospects of recovery. It's very important to hear that the feedback from business is generally very positive and supportive. We also discussed today the opportunities for innovation. What's the next big thing for Ukrainian agriculture in order to stay competitive, to minimize the risk, and also how to deal with the immediate difficulties, with the immediate risks that undermine the existing model of the Ukrainian agricultural sector. But more to come. Please stay tuned to the UCAB YouTube channel, to our social media. We'll be informing you about the next topic we will pick up to discuss as we continue to inform our audience in Europe and around the world what Ukrainian agriculture sector is, what it isn't, and how we help Ukraine, Europe, and the world be safer in terms of food, in terms of prosperity and welfare. Thank you very much, everyone, and I wish you productive and safe day ahead in Ukraine.